السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر
الله أكبر
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
أشهد أن لا
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله.
أشهد
أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
حقا لا إله إلا الله محمد عبده ورسوله. اللهم هذه الدعوة سيلة والفضيلة وبعث درجة علينا. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستغفره ونستعينه ونستهديه ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وخليله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي المقصرة أولا بتقوى الله، فاتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. ثم أما بعد. All praise are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most gracious and the most merciful, and the best of His peace and blessings shall be bestowed upon His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and upon those that follow his footsteps. Respected brothers and sisters in Islam, in SAHABAH, we spoke about a very important advice from a great alim, rahmatullahi alayh, Imam Abu al-Hasan al-Nadwi, one of our greatest scholars in our modern time, a scholar from India that witnessed the British colonization and brutality in the Indian subcontinent and witnessed the deterioration of the condition of our Muslim Ummah, and wrote many books about Al-Nahda, about the revival of the Ummah, and about the steps required to reproduce a strong generation, a Sahaba-like generation that can bring back dignity to Muslims throughout the world. And here we are, many, many years after, we still see the violation of rights for Muslims in many countries, mainly in India, where Abu al-Hasan Mawdudi rahmatullah alayh, Abu al-Hasan Nadwi rahmatullah alayh was born and he died. In the last two khutbahs, we spoke about 12 characteristics that we need to pay attention to, mainly for our children and ourselves. Because we said that developing yourself and learning, it's not a short-time goal or a one-time goal. It's a continuous goal to develop and learn, because this is the sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, talab al-ilm, wherever it is and whenever you can. You should continuously develop and learn. And we all know the value of al-ilm wal-ulama wa ta'allum fil Islam. So, with these characteristics, we try together to understand simple steps, especially that Islam has been misrepresented to a lot of us, to many of us, that it's a religion of spirituality with no tangible effect on our daily lives. We realize that this is not true. It's absolutely not true. Islam should help us not to become monks or become spiritual beings. Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent it to us to become real developers of earth, ourselves and earth, which means we are engaged in life. We're not disconnected from life. And that's where true secularism kicks in, which is the separation of ad-din wa dunya. I'm not going to say state and church. I'm going to say the real secularism is separating your deen from your dunya, meaning your deen has no influence or effect in your dunya. Your deen is just a feel-good thing. But this is not the case. Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us guidance in it to manage everything, whether it's at home or in your business, in your classroom, dealing with others, your health, your wealth, your life. And it's sad to see many Muslims that are just trying to shed the light on things that have nothing to do with dunya. It doesn't only happen by non-Muslims, it happens by Muslims. They don't want us to see the full picture of Islam. With this, my brothers and sisters, I want to move today to the last part of this khutbah, which is benefiting from the great book that the Imam wrote, rahmatullah alayh, ماذا خسر العالم بانحطاط المسلمين. What did the world lose by or with the collapse of the Muslim civilization? In the first two khutbahs, we spoke about the general attributes that apply to all of us. And today we're going to talk about the attributes that he discussed that apply to leaders. So everything we've mentioned before, and I advise you to go back and watch the past two khutbahs. They're available on the YouTube channel of Dar Foundation. So you can connect everything together, inshallah. Very important for our children. And today, the attributes for leaders, which I want to start by saying that also should apply for each and every one of us. It is very dangerous for you to have an early judgment or prematurely judge your sons or your daughters as not being leaders. Very dangerous to make that judgment. You should expose them to every single knowledge that you can expose them to, because you don't know when their leadership will spark. Leadership sparks at the right time, in the right condition. You just need to give your children a chance. So you always have to think of your children as leaders. Treat them as leaders. Deal with them as leaders. And you will make leaders out of them. The two characteristics that the Sheikh discussed are very interesting. You don't read about it much in books of leadership. But they're very relevant. And they reflect true understanding of our condition as an ummah. Because the prosperity of an ummah has two sides to it. Has the strong public, and this strong public will produce strong leadership. One is closely tied to the other. And we have experienced as a community in Canada a serious problem with leadership throughout the years. Unqualified leadership. And we all know that qualified leadership is a very important characteristic or factor in a development of a community. As Muhammad ﷺ told us in many ahadith, but in a famous one, where he said, إِذَا أُوكِلَ الْأَمْرُ إِلَى غَيْرِ أَهْلِهِ فَارْتَقِبِ السَّاعَةِ. If any, not just leadership, but this is mainly on leadership, if any task is given to the non-qualified, await as-sa'a. And await as-sa'a here means await destructions, await catastrophes, await problems, because these are the beginnings of as-sa'a, is problems, disasters, catastrophes, earthquakes. So if you think about your community having weak leadership or non-qualified leadership, what is the outcome? Catastrophes, broken community, weak community, a community that cannot protect its rights, a community that had a lot of internal fights. And that's not the kind of community we want. And this is not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked us to do. So the two special characteristics that Shaykh rahmatullah alayhi spoke about are al-jihadu wal-ijtihad. I know the word might come as a shock to some people, but it was very interesting for me to learn. Al-jihadu wal-ijtihad. Two things a leader has to be ready with, understand very well, and practice in their life. What does al-jihad mean? And as we know, the word al-jihad, that became a taboo word. A lot of people are afraid to even mention or utter because of the negative campaigns against Islam. But we know al-jihad, as al-Imam explained it, بذل الوسع وغاية الجهد لنيل أكبر مطلوب. بذل الوسع is to do your utmost, whatever you have, to reach your maximum. Point number one. Reach your maximum in everything you do. If you still have room for work, and you don't do it, it's your responsibility. So badlul wusa, doing your best, your utmost, your maximum, wa ghayatul juhd, and the maximum effort. Maximum effort. These words have to ring in everybody's ears. There's no such a thing as it's enough. And I talk to my children here. There's no such a thing as I've studied enough. I've done enough. The word enough will not allow you to grow. No, I do the most. My maximum effort. As long as I'm capable and able to do, I will still do. Your maximum effort لِنَيْلِ أَكْبَرَ مَطْلُوب. So you can achieve the best of results. And here's the equation. You want the best of results, you put your maximum effort. You want the best of results, you put your maximum effort. Not have done enough, now I need to go play. So this is al-jihad. This is the true meaning of struggle. That we need to learn first before we teach others. And under the banner of jihad, the scholar said, or he divided into two sections. Section number one is al-mas'uliyya al-fardiyya wal-mas'uliyya 'anil ghayr. You don't only do your maximum effort for your own affairs. And listen to this, you want to be a leader? You don't exert your maximum effort and put your maximum effort for your personal issues only. You do it for yourself and for others. The same himma, the same azima, the same juhd, the same struggle, the same effort, the same zeal that you put in your own matters and affairs, you put for others. And here I draw your attention, parents, for a very important concept to keep in mind. If your children are not raised to put efforts for others as much as they put for themselves, then it's your fault that you haven't created leaders. It's your fault, and I'm sorry to say this. You train them to work as hard to serve others and others' needs as they do for their own needs. That's a leader. Here you spot a leader. Here you gave a gift for our community. But if you train them to focus on themselves and serving their own needs, you've wronged them. So your responsibility is not towards yourself only, towards others, and others means humans and environment. كل خلق الله سبحانه وتعالى. As Muhammad ﷺ taught us, الخلق كلهم عيال الله وأحب الخلق إلى الله أنفعهم لعياله. All creation are dependents of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the best of you, the most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one that are most beneficial to the creation of Allah. That's a leader. Your responsibility, you do your utmost to achieve your goals, and you do your utmost to serve others. This is al-jihad, in service. And the other point, or let's mention the ayat that also refer to this concept of service towards others and responsibility towards others. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Ali Imran said, أَفَغَيْرَ دِينِ اللَّهِ يَبْغُونَ وَلَهُ أَسْلَمَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ طَوْعًا وَكَرْهًا وَإِلَيْهِ يُرْجَعُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ayah is telling us clearly, أَفَغَيْرَ دِينِ اللَّهِ يَبْغُونَ. Those that are seeking other guidance or other ways of life, which also applies to us when we are evaluating our deen. Do you want to choose a guidance other than the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And then he says, وَلَهُ أَسْلَمَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. It's not, when you choose, and this is important, brothers and sisters and my dear children, when you choose to become Muslim, it's not just you as an individual who is governed by this Islam or belongs to Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَهُ أَسْلَمَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. All humans, all creations, أَسْلَمُوا لِلَّهِ. Meaning, are dependents of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning, and he said in an explanation, وَلَهُ أَسْلَمَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ طَوْعًا وَكَرْهًا وَإِلَيْهِ يُرْجَعُونَ. Whether you are submitting to the system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you don't have an option, like the planets, following the system like the animals, or you have an option like al-ins wal-jinn. You have an option to obey or disobey. Whether you have an option or don't have an option, له أسلم من في السماوات والأرض. So when you, as a Muslim, define yourself as a Muslim, know that all creations fall under your responsibility. Important concept for us to learn so we can spark this leadership in ourselves. And the second point that falls under jihad, inshallah, after the break, أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه فيا فوز المستغفرين. استغفر الله العظيم. اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. The second point to define al-jihad for a leader, being responsible, doing it utmost in serving yourselves and serving others, knowing everybody aslam lillah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is ma'rifatul waqi'i bima fihi min shar. And I feel, subhanallah, wallahi, rahmatullah alayhi shaykh, he nailed it with these 2 points. Because a lot of Muslim leadership, they think of their own masjid, or their own congregation, or their own center, not even thinking of other Muslims, let alone thinking of the whole community. This is not leadership. The second point, معرفة الواقع بما فيه من شر. Knowing the true, or having true understanding of your reality, and true understanding not just of the good things and the bad things. How are you going to be a leader if you don't know the threats? And it's interesting that also in leadership or in management, if you want to evaluate a project, you have to do risk assessment, you have to do SWOT analysis, and threats is one of them. So if you don't know the threats, if you don't know the danger, if you don't know the bad habits, if you don't know evil, how are you going to lead? Which is a message that we cannot raise our children in a fully sterilized environment, not knowing, but I'll get to this in a second, not knowing is shar. As the Sha'ir said, Abu Feras al-Hamadani, عرفت الشر لا للشر لكن لتوقيه ومن لم يعرف الشر من الخير يقع فيه. عرفت الشر لا للشر لكن لتوقيه. I have to know shar, I have to know evil, but not for the sake of knowing evil because I want to enjoy it, or samahallah, do it because it's a sin, but I need to know it so I can avoid it, so I know how to deal with it. How can I guide my children if I don't know what kind of threats they're facing in schools? And then he says, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَعْرِفِ الشَّرَّ مِنَ الْخَيْرِ يَقَعْ فِيهِ. And if you don't know the difference between right and wrong, evil and good, you might trip and fall into it. So here we say, we need to raise our children to know shar. We need to know shar. We need to know what's out there. We can't have naive leadership. We can't have exemplary leadership that doesn't know that evil exists. Some people, wallahi, I've seen some leadership in our community, you tell them about a threat, they don't even know it exists. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu wa ardah said, إنما تنقض عرى الإسلام عروة عروة إذا نشأ في الإسلام من لم يعرف الجاهلية. Allahu Akbar. I've always said the jail of Sahaba, they've experienced Jahiliyyah before Islam. They have the understanding, the street smarts, الفهلوة, صاحين, وعي. They know the dangers, they know evil. And this is the generation that flipped the entire world in 15 years. They were not naive. They were not darawish. They were not monks. They knew shar before they knew al-khayr. وخياركم في الجاهلية خياركم في الإسلام كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم أو كما قال. We need to know shar. We need to understand reality. This is where he said, تنقض عرى الإسلام عروة عروة. Islam will, as a unity, not in its resources, the Quran was Sunnah, that's Quran is protected. But Islam as we know it, as a group, as a community, as a function, as an application, will disintegrate a piece by piece. Listen to this. Our unity, our group, our community will disintegrate a piece by piece. When إذا نشأ في الإسلام من لم يعرف الجاهلية. When you get to the second generation, third generation that are born into Islam, born into an environment where they think everything is perfect and they don't know that there's shar out there, it will disintegrate our community. Pay good attention to it. So what does that mean? Because some people will take this in a wrong way, will say, well, I need to send my kids to public schools because they have to learn that there's something else out there. And I believe that this is wrong. Because knowing shar, it doesn't mean exposing them on their own to shar. Because they might not be able to deal with it. Because they might be so weak that they will get sucked into it. So it doesn't mean throw them in fire and tell them do not burn. But exposing them to shar means you are raising them to know everything. You give them the piece of information. Because a lot of evil out there, through websites, through apps, through games, through media, through movies, it's extremely attractive. And will have a very negative impact on our children, especially the young ones. They can't tell the difference. They need guidance. So what we're saying here is, معرفة الجاهلية through us. We raise them to know there's shar. There's khair and there's shar and there's this and there's that. But you have that conversation with them. You give them, you introduce the information. And you know how to introduce it properly, with keeping in mind that they know this is shar and this is khair. Which leads us to many challenges that we have in schools right now. Many challenges in introducing ideas that we as Muslims believe are shar. We believe are shar. If you know that this information is being introduced in a way that shows that it's khair, don't accept it. You have absolute right, constitutional right, to say, I will let them know, but I'll let them know in my way that allows me to follow my deen. I have a freedom of religion, freedom of speech. My deen is saying this. It's saying it's shar. Don't come and tell me it's not shar. I'm sorry. I'm not going to accept it. If my deen says it's shar, that means it's shar. Then I'm going to tell my children, this is shar. This is evil. That's the way it is. So be careful when shar yuzayyan and being beautified and introduced as khair. Be very careful of this because it's happening a lot in our day and time. It's happening a lot in schools. And the last point, al-ijtihad. We said al-jihadu wal-ijtihad. Al-ijtihad, that these two things that any leader should have. Al-ijtihad is the diligence. And they kind closely knit to each other. Al-jihad wal-ijtihad. So you struggle to serve yourself, to serve others, do your utmost to reach your best, to put your best. And then you have ijtihad. And this is related to ad-deen. First one related to dunya and your effort in the dunya, your effort in your development, your effort in developing yourself and developing your community and developing earth. And al-ijtihad is in ad-deen. يجب أن نجتهد في الدين. We should do our due diligence in understanding our religion, understanding its application. Now we might not all become ulama. We might not all become ulama. And it's not an expectation for all leaders to be ulama. But we have a minimum that we have to maintain of our ijtihad in our deen. There's a minimum. Especially that you know that your motive is deen. Your drive is deen. You want to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How is it possible? And I've heard this a lot from people, and wallahi, it boggles my mind. A family that's not even interested in taking the children to masajid, they'll say, oh, I'm raising a leader to lead the ummah. How? You're not doing the minimum. The minimum of understanding your deen, applying it on yourself, making sure you know al-halal min al-haram. ما لا يسع المسلم جهله. You know the minimum. As a leader, if you don't know the minimum of protecting yourself from slipping into haram, how are you going to be a leader? You can't. You're not qualified. We're not asking you to be a alim, but you have to have the minimum of your knowledge in your deen, your salah, your mu'amalat, your day-to-day transactions. You need to know it. Otherwise, you're not going to be well guided. So what the Shaykh is saying here, you need to understand your deen. If you don't become an alim yourself, you need to make sure you rely on ulama, reputable ulama that know what they're doing, that can tie the deen into dunya. And with this, my respected brothers and sisters, we will have true leaders with al-jihad and al-ijtihad, with the struggle and the diligence and the power to do and the effort to serve and change. And this is only when we can have a strong community that can protect its rights, that can defend itself and can maintain and protect its deen and stay on the right path. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show us the right path and help us follow it. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه اللهم أرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه اللهم اقسم لنا من خشيتك ما تحول به بيننا وبين معاصيك ومن طاعتك ما تبلغنا به جنتك ومن اليقين ما تهون به علينا مصائب الدنيا متعنا اللهم بأسماعنا وأبصارنا وأبداننا أبدا ما أحييتنا واجعله الوارث منا واجعل ثأرنا على من ظلمنا اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية في الدنيا والآخرة اللهم عافنا في ديننا اللهم عافنا في دنيانا اللهم استر عوراتنا وآمن روعاتنا واحفظنا من بين يدينا ومن خلفنا وعن يميننا وعن شمائلنا ومن فوقنا ونعوذ بعظمتك أن نغتال من تحتنا إنك على كل شيء قدير إن الله ملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وأنت يا أخي أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
حقا لا إله إلا الله محمد عبده ورسوله. استقيموا استووا اعتدلوا. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. ونريد أن نمن على الذين استضعفوا في الأرض ونجعلهم أئمة ونجعلهم الوارثين ونمكن لهم في الأرض ونري فرعون وهامان وجنودهما منهم ما كانوا يحذرون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر.